that you have on your face. I'm really pasting pale in mine. I don't know what's going on, but
I'll send you the light bulb that I use.
all right. So here we got this awesome, I guess, thing I put together. Just it's been something that I have kind of a lot of people don't really work with responsive design. They kind of just take Power Apps as it is. They don't realize the power that you can do, and this is really just a tip of the iceberg, but something to help make it better. So I wanted to trying to think of what would benefit those who maybe are beginning users to more advanced, but still have never really dived deep. Just some nice tips and tricks. Uh, as we get started, we're just going to go through some things. Um, as I get this, oh, I got to turn that on. So just a little bit about me. I've been married for quite a while now. Got two boys. One's in college, and one just turned 5 in December. So that's I thought I was going to be empty nester, and that didn't happen. But it's been great. Been in the industry, been working web development since 1998. All the crazy stuff, beginning self-taught. But I've had a great run and doing a lot of different things. Um, if those who know about me will understand that I am totally in love with Superman. Always have been since I was 2, and my grandma actually, sewed me a costume for Halloween, and I slept in that thing for maybe the next whole year. Um, but I've worked throughout the industry mainly for the past since 2000. I've been with the federal government um, in different aspects, and then off and on with commercial when I worked with Microsoft. But worked with a lot of people, mainly in the DoD, but also Forest Service. I did quite a stint there, and that was very fun. But just a bit about me. I do a lot of different things, and I have a lot of different hobbies, and just try to make everything work together. I have an art background, um, and so I really try to use the multimedia aspect of multimedia and combine many things. So just before we get started, I have some expectations, right, for this. Some rules, I guess, if you could say. Not big deal. I love questions, right? In fact, and Rachel knows this. This is why I wanted to be part of this group. I want to teach. I want to help others learn. And so love the questions, but please just stay on topic if you can. If you can't, let's just take it outside or, parking lot, make it a parking lot question. Uh, for this, I'm going to ask that keep your microphones muted just so there's no feedback for other people. It is okay to interrupt. Do so. If you can't, or you're lost, or I'm speaking too fast, please stop or come off mic, say something, um, or type it in the chat. That's going to be monitored. I think Rachel's going to monitor that, and she will let me know. Just don't feel like you can't, right? Ask questions. I don't want ever that to be the case. Um, so go ahead and do what you need to get the answers. Some questions are going to be for later, and even if you want a question answered not on, but you want a question answered but not on camera or on a recording, go ahead and type it in chat and just mark it like for later or something, and then we can talk to you or find out the information, or maybe even after we stop the recording, we can address those as well. As some of you know, those who have worked with me before, I am like, I guess, tenacious. If I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you, one way or another. So, um, I'm always there to help people, learn, as I said. Okay. And if you're going to ask a question over the microphone around recording, you have to sing it like this, as if it were in a musical. No, that's just kidding. I would prefer it, but you know. Not everyone can or are willing, but I wish life was a musical, to be honest. It seems so happy. My biggest thing is let's just have fun. Let's not take things too seriously until we need to, but hopefully we don't. I really am a big believer that if you're not having fun, you're not really truly learning. And so the more fun you're going to have, the more fun it is for you, and the more enjoyable you're going to be learning and taking it to heart. So let's just have fun. Okay, so in this I guess, presentation of HTML and responsive design. Why should I care? Well, you should care because I care. No, but you should care because I feel that when we are making first impressions, our designs, our products, what we develop is a first impression. We want to make a good impression on people, so they want to continue to use our products, our designs, and keep coming back for more. One thing I do not like is having a product that I create where then I hear people like, oh, I just hate that. I hate having to use it. It's such a pain, or it just looks so horrible. So I'm all for, pretty cute, whatever you want to do, but make it usable, heavy into the UI UX so that people enjoy and actually want to like get those endorphins, right? There's so many things out there that there's a study of how many clicks and clickbaits and things that get your attention make you want to dive in. And so that's kind of how I feel. Not that we should go overboard, but that we should really think about how people are using the products that we make so that we can be better as a developer. So why should I care? It's because I want to better myself, better my products, make others want to use it, and be more professional looking is what you're going to get out of this. And with some simple, easy tips and tricks that we're going to learn, you will quickly be able to put yourselves above others in how that works and how it looks. And really, why should you care? So you can be nerdy, right? We want to be nerdy. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. That's something I've learned a long time ago. Being a geek, nerd, whatever you want to call yourself. There's two different definitions. I get it, and that in itself is kind of nerdy. But we want to be the best we can. And if that means being a nerd, embrace it. So for quickly, we're just going to go over the agenda, some definition of terms we're going to talk about. So we're all on the same page. We're going to talk about our goals. We're going to go ahead and hit our goals one by one. There's only two goals, and we'll go over those. And then we'll do a quick build and demo so you can see it live rather than just sharing slides. I don't want to. This is probably one of the longest presentation slides I have done, and I don't like that. I would rather do some practical things and show you how to do it and get some real stuff. Also, as an FYI, I plan on sharing these slides out on a GitHub that I will present, or we'll get a link put together where you can download the slides, except for maybe my personal stuff, right? And also where the code will be for what we build and maybe the MS app. So you can download and you can take it apart on your own terms and review it. As long as you also have this video that you can refer back to. So just try and leave you with everything that you can to succeed. You need to succeed. So let's go over definitions, right? What we're going to talk about is responsive layout. Okay. So responsive layout basically is making it so that whatever we do in our visual side or on our canvas, especially in Canvas apps, that it looks consistent across all devices, all resolutions. So whether I'm on a phone, it might change, right? Because you have a standard, this is smaller, and it might be a wider screen than on the computer screen or on the tablet, but at the same time, relative to each other, it looks pretty much consistent across. And so it doesn't look like something's cut off or I have to scale with my fingers or something or pinch to zoom it in order to see the whole everything. So we're going to talk about how you can do that quickly. And I'm not going to show everything because then there's no learning on your own involved. But we'll show you some quick wins on how to do that. Relative positioning, again, this is something that's not normally used by a lot of people. And how you use it and why you would use it. A lot of it comes to you want the polish on it, make it more custom looking. Okay. Controls. So when we talk about control, especially in Canvas app, those are the individual elements so when we say a gallery, that is a control, or a text control. Those are all called controls. They're little snippets, little widgets that we add. We have HTML for those who are not, because I don't want to assume that everybody knows what these things are. So we have the HTML, which is hypertext markup language, which is how websites are built, right? The backbone of websites. And we can use this language and this code inside of Power Apps very robustly if we were so willing to do so. And we have CSS, which is makes the things pretty, right? It makes HTML pretty. Any questions before I go on? I'm going to take that as no. All right. Hopefully we're not too bored yet. Okay, let's talk about our goals. So our goal first, we're going to have we're going to talk about responsive design. We're going to talk about responsive layout. Kind of show you how to do responsive layout natively. And right now, Microsoft across all clouds do it differently, unfortunately. And there's sometimes if you go a different route, you don't even have an option until you get into the settings. So we're going to explore that, show you what happens when you don't use a responsive layout and just rely on things. And then we're going to talk about relative positioning and how to do so it looks polished and clean. The next goal is, again, HTML layouts. We're going to understand why we need the HTML control. Many people are just like, well, that's great. I can do something quick. Or a lot of people that I've dealt with in the past kind of use it and go, that's too hard. It's not worth it. It's just not worth the squeeze. And so they just give up and do something else. But it is a very powerful tool. In fact, instead of having multiple controls, you actually have one control that can do everything you need, or most of the things you need, with simple understanding of HTML. Okay, so also we're going to explore string interpolation. That is something that's a fun word to say, but many people don't know what that is, and it is a developing programming language type term. It helps us, well, we'll see. It helps us, add inline code to a string that allows us, it will help us immensely when we talk about working with HTML. And of course, we're going to, talk about how do we make things pretty and cute and fun. And I know this might be sounding weird coming from me being this guy, but I like cute things, so, you get what you get. Now, you're asking why? What's the relationship between these two? I'm here to tell you there isn't anything related to each other really. It's just two different topics that I wanted to jam into this teaching. So we're going to take it bit by bit and start with one, and then we're going to terminate that and go two, right? So that's kind of how this is going to run. So for the responsive design, right? Unfortunately, people think when you have Canvas apps, that's low code, no code. I get it. When I was working for Microsoft and I had to teach people these things, I hated the fact that we call it low code, no code, because really it is code. Yeah, you can drag and drop and do things all day long, but you still have to add code. Now, Microsoft gets away with that because they don't call it code, they call it scripting. And so it's not code to them. So they say it's no code because it's not really code, it's script. But it actually is code, and it's sorry if you're creating Power Apps, you are a developer. And then if you don't want to be one, I'm sorry, you kind of are one. But with that code, there is what's called, something called math. And we learned in school, or we argue with our teachers, many of us, that we don't need math. Well, if you're in any kind of development, you realize, and especially dealing with code and formulas, that there's a lot of math, and you wish you had paid more attention to algebra, right? Or geometry, because there's a lot of that going on. And when you're dealing with relative and responsiveness and relative positioning, there is a lot of math. And so what I end up doing is sketching a lot of it out on paper. Here's some common examples you've probably seen if you've done anything, right? So we want to center something on the screen, height and width for the vertical and width alignment. We would do parent.width minus self.width, and all encapsulated divided by 2. We follow the order of operations. I guess it's called PIMDOS now. When I was growing up, I don't know, my teacher made it stick because I forgot what the PIMDOS was, but she told us it was please exterminate my dear Aunt Sally. And that seemed to stick really well with me. I didn't have a dear Aunt Sally, but that's what PIMDOS meant to me. So at least the order of operations always stayed with me. But it does, when you're dealing with math and inside of Power Platform and Power Apps specifically, the order of operations is important. And so parentheses become a real thing. You don't just type it out. And not including them gives you completely different, results. Here's another one that you might see. You have a text input 1.x or text input 1.x plus the dot width. Can anybody tell me what that does or what it's doing? Does anybody know? I don't know where we're all at here, but if anybody can raise their hand or come off mute and maybe say what that does. Not, I'll give you a little bit of time. All right, Rachel.
The dot X is the X position, like where it's sitting on the X axis, and then the dot width is how long that control is.
Yeah. So if the dot X position is, let's say 10, so if you look at the XY grid, right, X00 being the top left on your graph paper or on your canvas, and you have the X being 10 pixels in, then you're going to have, and you have a 30 pixel control, wide control, then this would end up being how long? So 10 plus the width is 30, because we start at 10 where the X is, and plus 30 plus 15.
45.
55. 10
Oh,
plus 30
oh
plus
God.
15. Yep. So if you type this in when your X point was seen at 10, the number that you would automatically calculate would be 55 on this, right? So that's what you're that is actually positioning something then is sitting at 55 pixels rather than, so you're using something else to calculate relative to where you need it to be. Here's some other ones, right? If you have a variable, like you want to show me, right? Show me if show me, right? If it's visible, if true is what this is showing, then we're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to show it to be 0. We want the width. So this is kind of like a slide out or a blade that you're going to show and display something. You use relative positioning for that. Yes.
Couldn't you also just use the element dot visible property and just check to see directly if that element or property or control is visible instead of delegating that to a variable?
You could, yes. Sometimes it depends on what you're doing. I've seen it both ways. Neither one is bad. It depends on what effect you're getting too. Sometimes if you can do it this way, it gives the effect of a slide and things will start, depending on how you set up, will start to, like sometimes if you do it visible, a lot of times people will say, well, let's say you have a horizontal, let me think about, what is it called? A horizontal, not gallery, but a horizontal container, which then you have multiple things that are across. And if you did a visible, right, for that last container, then it would automatically stretch and grow without it when it shows and does not. So you can do the visible that way. If you did this, you might want to do something like a slide out of your, but not on top of it or something like that. So you can create more of an effect that looks like a traditional web style slide back and forth. And then you can make it 0 or make it not. And you can also do this if you wanted to put it in a horizontal or vertical thing. It's kind of multiple ways of doing things. It depends on how you want to manage it. And sometimes you're not using those containers. Sometimes you're doing it without containers as well. So not everyone uses containers, although containers are great, and I use containers, but not for everything. It depends on what you're doing. So yes, you can do it.
Gotcha, cool.
But it also, our favorite word is, it depends, our favorite phrase. Neither way is good. This is just an example of where you might see something like this happen. Not necessarily wrong.
I do love that phrase though.
It depends, yeah. That was one of the words I was trained when becoming a tech person. They always say, just give the answer, it depends. Because there's hardly anything is ever just black and white. It just depends. All right, so here's another formula. I mean, this is just a generic formula that you might see something like positioning and sizing. Here's a great one. So what a lot of people don't know is when you do math, if I were to say if I were to say anything 0.33 or multiply times 0.33, what does that give me? That gives me 0.33. If I say times 3, that gives me 99. Almost, or 99.9, almost to 100, but not quite 100. If I were to actually use the percent sign instead, and we can use it, it reads both, it actually calculates the exact 33%, with that in the infinite number, about the 333, and so you get a whole 100%. So that's another thing that we can look at and to help us in our sizing positioning. Okay, so right now in commercial, you have only, and we start with an app and you do it not through a solution, you're given 2 options. And I think right now, currently DoD, as of a couple of days ago, you're given 3 options. You still have the tablet option. And they kind of take these away, move them around. If you go through a solution, which you will see, you will get a tablet or a phone option, mobile or a tablet. That's about it. You don't get the responsive. So the question is, how do we get there? Because really best practice is if we want to share and we're doing something more than just an app, Canvas app, we really want to put things inside the solution so they're scoped together and you can build them and make them accessible to others and move them across environments. So this is just, again, when you create, you'll see that you can get to the settings, you can change it to fixed or responsive, depending on what you get. If you start with a responsive, it's going to be responsive. If you want it to be fixed, you can do fixed by default, the fixed layout of a app, or even a responsive layout, even though it seems weird. A responsive layout by default is 1366 by 768. That infinite number, I don't know why they haven't made it bigger by now with our resolutions, but that is the screen size that they try to get you to use. And it works great if you, again, for most things. Okay, so let's look at our demo. Let's pull this thing out here. What I got here, right? So if this is from hitting the word create, and this is create from blank. This is where I have the option responsive or mobile. I can do either one. I've actually went ahead and created the responsive one. What responsive does, and I kind of took this off. Let's see. This is all to come later. You will see. Let's see how many undos. I never figured out how many undos I get. There we go. This is what you get when you create a responsive app that way. And it's really hard to see. I don't like how they try to, they always want to be 508 compliant, but they make it really difficult to want to be that way. So let's just fold it out a little bit more. Now, if you go ahead into play mode right here, this is what you get. This is actually 1366 by 768. And we can verify that by looking at highlighting the background, the container, and you can see parent.width and parent.height. This is what we get. However, they've built in some other calculations. So if I want to go ahead and say window size, you can see that it stretches to its size. It also allows us to make it look good on whatever, right? This is what responsive design is trying to help you out in doing so. Most of the time I develop actually in Canvas, and I don't typically use responsive mode at all. In fact, most of the time I will come in here if I only have responsive, and I will come back here to my display and I will change it to fixed and then choose a size 16 by 9 or whatever. And that's the 1366 by 768 is 16 by 9. But it's going to change, right? So we have different screens. If you're not worried about mobile, I really try to stay off responsive. That's just me. If I'm doing things on mobile or different screen sizes, I will go ahead and do responsive. We're going to keep it responsive for now. We're going to show you why what happens on fixed as well. Okay. So then here, right? So if you're in a solution, and this is what we see, and this is the same across commercial and DoD, GCC High, all the cloud tenants. When you are in a solution and you decide to do a new app, this is what you get: tablet or phone. So, and it's not responsive by default. It is a fixed size, and you have to go ahead and turn on the responsiveness. kind of crazy. I don't know if Microsoft's ever going to fix it so it's the same feel every time you do it or not. It would be very helpful. Maybe that's why we need to comment on that one. But and you do need a lot of people. So, you know, Microsoft does listen to comments, but only when they get flooded by it. So, you know, go to the survey and then put in something that you want changed, but then have your friends and family do it, and everybody that you know, even if they don't use the product, have them go and just hit the survey, so that Microsoft thinks that there's a lot of people that want this. It actually does go a long way. It's kind of funny how you have to kind of almost play the system to get what you need. So this is a vertical container, right? And if I were to, I can switch it to horizontal, or I can switch to vertical. And now it's what it did was reset some of the stuff, which let me see if I can get it back. No, so dang it. This is one thing. Okay, so these are all here, the elements are here, but this became let's do a flexible height and bring this to flexible height. And this is what's hard for a lot of people to deal with when they're doing responsive is the flexible height stuff. Bring this back to non-flexible height because I just want it to be a 75, and now we've got to reset to what they gave us. I am still going to go ahead and delete this because, oh, not that. This guy, because I just want more of a thing. Change our background again to some kind of dark, so we just have some easy way to see what's going on. And I'm going to add those two images that I had out there. So we're going to go to media, I had it preloaded. I'm going to enter this guy, the SVG, so it's fully scalable without pixelation. And we're going to add this one as well. Okay. All right. And this is getting fun. Let's see. There we go. So now let's go ahead and play this, see what happens. Right. So this looks great. No issue. Window size. Yeah, okay. There's some more space over here. It's fine. I have no issue with that. Let's go change it to Apple. Okay. No biggie. Cool. It's starting to encroach a little bit. So tablet, I have no issue with that. We go to phone. Oh my goodness, what happened? Right? Like this is starting to look pretty bad. In fact, then we change the direction, and this is what's happening when we do not take into account our responsive design. So let's get off of this. How do we change this? How do we make it so that when we are doing something like that, we want to make sure that it scales to whatever screen as well, so it looks correct? Well, this is where we go into our image. And our image is inside of just the screen right now. So instead of that, let's leave it in screen. And let's look at the screen. Our screen is 768 or 1366 by 768. So we're going to pick one. In fact, what we're going to do is kind of make this the same height and width. So it's squared out. And so we're going to have to know what percentage of this is the width or the height to either the height or the width of the screen. So let's go ahead and pick, let's see what's more important. Let's do 768 at the height. So can anybody calculate real quick, faster than me maybe, the percentage of, what is it, 335 divided by 768 gives us roughly 4 point, okay, so we're just gonna we're gonna round it up to 45, make it easy, 45%. So this is 45% the height of this entire screen. Okay. All right, so here's the fun thing. I'm going to take this width and I'm going to set it to be self, that's reflective to itself, dot height. So it's going to be the same width as the height. Okay, cool. So right there it's kind of grayed out, telling you that's the formula. The height. Now the height needs to be, let's see, we're going to say We can do parent, which is this. If we call it a parent child, this is the parent, or we can do the app height, app width. So it actually is different depending on what you do and what kind of look you're going for. I'm going to choose screen right now. So I can call it out as screen 1 dot height, right? Or I can say parents dot height, which is usually what most people do, but I want it to be 45% of it. So times 45%. So no matter what the screen height is, it's going to be 45% of that height. Let's go ahead and look at that. There's a 45. If I switch it, still 45. I change this window size. It's 45%. Canvas size, 45%. Okay, cool. Let's do this one now. This one is a long one, right? We don't want it to be the height because we see how that it got cut off. So we want to make this maybe, I don't know, let's check what size this is. This is 847. We're going to go ahead and make it 850, just for nice round numbers. And the width of this is 1366. So anybody want to put in chat what the 850 divided by 1366 is? And then I can look, or someone can tell me, or come off and let's just say it. Come on, guys, interactiveness.
It's looking like about 62%.
All right, so let's go with 62%. Sounds good to me. So we'll go here and say parent width times 62%. Okay. Now let's see if it worked, right? Of course it worked on this because it's the same. Let's go to the iPhone. Look at that. Now it's 62%. Let's even go a little further and let's do that relative positioning that we talked about. So we go to our X position. Remember, it starts at 0, 0 from wherever the parent is. The parent for this image 4 is screen 1. So 0, 0 is at this very far corner. Parent dot width minus self dot width. So it knows it's self. Okay. That's one way to position. Here's one we can do. We could divide by 2 minus self dot width divided by 2. You can do that. But I've come to learn that, and this is the way I used to always tell people. I just say parent dot width divided by 2 minus self dot width divided by 2. But really, a nice cleaner way to do that is just go ahead and parent dot width and encapsulate it all minus self dot width, and that's what it's doing divided by 2. And all that is doing is finding the center of each and making them merge together, right? So you're saying finding the center of the big screen and finding the center of this one and making it align together. And let's just go ahead and take that same thing here. And let's do the X here as well. Okay. So now, no matter what screen we have, we should be pretty much looking the same, except for when we go to super small screens, but it will still be centered. Let's go to, I don't know, so as you can see, nothing's getting cut off. Now you're starting to see some strange, but we can relative position that. And we'll do this in just a quick second. So we want this to be, for example, this is where it's at. We want this Y position. So this is Y0. We want it to be after this. So again, this is image 4. So for the Y, we don't know necessarily, we know that image 4 is at 0, 0, but we're going to pretend we don't. So if we say image 4 dot Y, so where's the height, plus image 4 dot height, so now it's going to add from here to here, and that's where it's going to set its Y value. Now, the nice thing about that is I can go ahead and make this, I want this to be 10 or 15, and moves everything down with it. So now you can see it is no longer overriding or on top of it, right? So let's go ahead and just switch again, it's not overriding. See, it's different. And of course, we're on top of this whole thing. I never did it inside of here, but it's kind of what we're seeing how this now gets your stuff. So it's not getting cut off and like, why does it not look good on different formats? you can start to play with that through relative positioning. And go window size. Okay. So any questions so far? I know it's quite a bit and quick. Or does it all make sense? You're all liking math now, admit it. We like math.
Now it's going really good, Brent. No questions on my side.
Okay, awesome. All right, so now this is great for screen, like what I do for like splash screens or something like that. Most of the time when I'm using relative positioning though, I will have, and I'm just going to, I'm going to get rid of these containers. And I'm going to add a container. Just a regular container. We use containers a lot. They're just to group items. They're kind of buggy though, so you have to make sure you grab it the right place so you can drag it. And what I do containers for is a lot of custom form work. I rarely use the insert form. I try to stay away from that because this looks the same. And you're dealing with cards and they have to unbreak cards, and it's not just customizable. I want to be able to put things where I want them. So I will go ahead and go into my forms input, right? Let's add a text input. So it's there. We're just going to add a couple of things, just throw stuff out there. Sure, combo box, and why not a date picker? Right, so we got all these different things. And let's go ahead and add a button as well. Oh, but you know what we do need? We might not necessarily want to just use the hints. We want to actually have labels like the traditional form. So we have this, right? And we're going to copy this 1 and 3. All right, so we have these guys all sitting around here in a button. What I'm going to do first is grab this guy and position it somewhere. I just arbitrarily, I like it here, okay? Then I'm going to grab onto this thing, and I can do this. However, if I do this, now I'm going to have to drag this over, right? So that's not very fun, especially if you're editing and moving things around. So what I'll do a lot of times for relative positioning and for maintenance is I'll either take this guy or I'll take this guy. Usually I take the first form control when I'm dealing with it, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm sorry, I like things to be bold and to show something, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a 1 pixel and there, or maybe 2 pixel, just so that it is kind of seen very well. It might be a little ugly right now, but we can see it, and that's what's important. So what I'm going to grab is this. I like this where this is positioned. I want the text to be the same. So let's name in text input 1. And yes, you should name your controls better, but for this, we're not going to want to spend all that time doing that here. We'll come to X, and we're going to say it is equal to this dot X. So we're going to keep the same X position as the control. Okay, well, what about the Y? Well, here's the thing. You've either got to decide if you want to drag your controls by the label or drag your controls by the form control. So we'll come to Y, and we're going to say the Y is equal to this dot Y. So again, we're starting there. So it puts it 0, 0 to 0, 0. But then we needed the height of its current self. So we subtract it. So we minus self dot height. And that puts it right there. Now, what happens? If I drag this, see the label goes with it, right? Now here comes the next thing. Okay, how do we do the next one? Well, this is easy. We do the Y, just grab this guy, and text 1. There's ways to do this. You basically build a grid. The Y is equal to text 1 dot Y. Now it puts exactly where that's at. We want the X to be along with this combo box 1. So we come back over to the X dot X. Okay, well, the problem is if this isn't lined up, then it looks all you want. Well, let's make a layer out of it. Let's do this. Text input one, let's do combo box instead. So it sticks with it. So combo box. Oh, dang it, I put it on the X. I want it on the Y. Let's put combo box one. All right, great. But again, it's not lined up. I want it to be fully lined up with here. So we're going to grab this guy, text input one. And for our Y, we're going to do text input one dot Y. We're going to make sure that it, dot Y. So that it lines up. Now, if I do this, look at this. It's all coming together. They all work together now, right? Cool. Now, any questions so far? This X, though, I don't like that it has this gap, but I want to keep it consistent across all. So I might grab this guy again and say where this ends, I want to give it maybe a 15 or 20 pixel gap. So let's go ahead and say text box one or text input one dot X is where it starts plus text box or text input. I always want to say text box one dot width. Okay, so here we go. Took a little bit to update. Plus, let's give it 20 pixels. And now we have a nice laid out area, right? So we can do that with everything else. We can grab now this guy in this column. We're going to line it with one of these and kind of just build it the same way. For sake of time, I'm not going to do that necessarily. I'm just going to cheat. But you definitely should not, okay? Because you do have these. But what's nice about this is if I were to do this, right, it's all going to stay where it should be. Now, if I want to say, hey, this really drop down should be all the way over here, like stretched that big because I have a huge, gigantic paragraph I want to put in the drop down, we can do that. So we're going to do that with the width. We're going to say something like, parent.width, right? So let's take, what this is doing here is actually taking the width of the parent starting from this point. So the parent width is, what do we have? 1048. So this says this is 1048 starting from here. So that's why it's off. So we have to subtract it. Minus self dot x. Oops. So we want to subtract that. And now you can see it brings it back within the bounds. But we will kind of want a border. So we're going to do another minus. Let's do 40, right? So now that we've got a nice little border across. And if I were to shrink this, it kind of goes with it. So we can make it as big or small as we want. You can have third columns that's our size in between this one, and depending on how you expand or contract it will follow. Go ahead, Rachel.
What makes you choose a regular container versus the combination of vertical and horizontal and a nested horizontal container?
Well, one would be depending on what I'm doing. The next, it depends on what I want. If I'm doing a quick like drop down or something like that, or I'm not too worried about tab indexing, I might choose this. I personally don't like containers inside containers embedded unless they're needed for a certain reason, or inside of a gallery because they get really hard to manipulate. And then you have these tree views that you're trying to look for everything and you're just drilling down. And I personally don't like it. And plus, if I ever want to come in and move something, now I'm confined by a container that's in that container, and then I have to manipulate all the containers to get where I need versus
Yeah.
dragging what I want to drag, where I want to drag it. Yes. Next, Sam, I believe.
Yeah, so if I can add on to that, and the way I've always reasoned between using horizontal vice vertical containers and sometimes screens, I typically actually shy away from using screens as a container, but vertical containers will basically take all of the controls you put into that container and start populating them out vertically, vice horizontally, or horizontal containers will then take it and drop it down horizontally instead. So if you were to take a vertical container and add a text control and then add another text control, it is going to go vertical. So it is going to go down below the very first text control you just put in. And horizontal containers will do the other direction. So if you add it to a horizontal container, it will add it to the right. And the cool thing too with these containers is that you can actually swap them on the fly in newer versions of Power Apps. So if you see there's the direction in container 2, you can actually swap this. So say I don't want the buttons to populate up and down. You can just swap them to be horizontal.
Yep. And what's cool about this too is you also, let me get back to, you also, oh, I can't get it. There you go. You can also have what's called a gap, right? So you can say how wide or small you want things.
Or how far apart you want your controls to be from one another.
Yeah, from each other. So you have like the kind of built-in border. So that's all good. And it's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. And in fact, I do it a lot. I use, it depends on what I'm doing though. Sometimes I'll do one, sometimes I'll do the other. So if I want, this gap is really, that's really big. It's not going to actually affect it. Oh, this guy, because we want to have the height to be the full, why is it not getting the full height? Usually it's, where's my flexible height? There we go. So right here, if you turn on the flexible height, and then we do a gap, you can kind of see, come on. This is why I don't do a lot. So you can see it, you're creating your gaps, and then you're padding and all that stuff. It can be.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I like seeing the way that you're showing us, because I mean I am used to the nested containers.
Well, yeah, and then you come into here and you say, I want another container, I want a vertical or a horizontal container. It puts in there, and then you can put, let's insert, make your vertical stuff. But then if you need another container,
if you need to change direction again,
or you need, then it just gets
Yeah.
nasty.
And that's just it. In the tree view, it looks really gross. So I do agree with the standard container, but the way that I've made mine is the gross way by just changing directions of containers. So it's a pick your poison kind of deal.
Well, so here's another thing to consider, right? So those who are working in government and those who are not, and just you should have 508 compliance. And that's coming from, working 508 compliance since 2000 that I was forced into.
Yeah, of course.
This is not 508 can be if it's planned out ahead of time. So if we go to our tab control, right, it's going to try to interpret the best way you can. However, if you have this one, will always go logically. So if you have a vertical container, it will always go down left, and it will hit this and always go to where you need it to be. It forces tab control, because when you got rid of the classic controls that actually had a tab control or tab value that you could add property, they got rid of that and they wanted to do it intuitively. This makes it a lot more difficult, because this is more of like how you created it, not dragged on where it's in your container. It's when did you create it, which one, and so it takes a lot more planning to do so. And that might be why you might want one over the other, just to make sure you're forcing that.
Very cool. Thank you, Brent.
Okay. Any other questions? So this, again, these are just simple things to consider when you're doing relative positioning, and just make sure that they're nice and cleaned up. There is so much more that I could show, but we would need probably about 6 hours, maybe 2 days of work to really, and I don't think we want to stay up until midnight, but I'm willing to if you all are. But there's a lot of cool things you can do, right? Just to make it shine and polish, because the other option is to do something like insert a form, and you get those who have worked with it, I'll use this, whatever it is. You get this form that if it loads, maybe it won't load. Jeez Louise. Yeah, you get this form, which, it looks nice, but now guess what? I can't do anything with it, and it takes a lot of work to break the card and make some changes, and I'd rather just be able to manipulate it the way I want to. Most people will go with form, but you can make that same form but still keep it fully editable, and draggable and such if you were to use the relative positioning. So actually, I'm going to save this because that way you guys can have code and like, whoa, what's going on? Before I do that, though, let me let me delete this one because I don't. That one, that one. Okay. All right. So yeah, and then what I'll end up doing is I will throw on some relative positioning on another screen with the sizing that I had, and I will package that up and put that in so you guys can look at the formulas and whatnot if you're interested. Okay. All right, so let's get back. We're going to now switch gears and we're going to go to the unrelated goal of using the HTML control. HTML, believe it or not, you can do a lot with it, and people are just not willing to dive in or don't know HTML or scared of it. One big drawback about using the HTML control is that there are no, if you're familiar with HTML, you have a head and there you can have the styles and all that and kind of refer to it. You cannot do that here. You have to do inline styling. That being said, I would say about 90% of modern CSS, CSS3, you can use every single thing in there. The one thing you cannot use, unfortunately, are the what's called a pseudo class. But other than that, pretty much everything else is available. Right, so here's one that I had done for my filament, for my 3D printer. I was trying to keep track because my son and I were just burning through it all, and I didn't know how much that I was using, and I wanted to keep the remaining. But the problem is, I took it off, and then my son's like, "Hey, I'm using black. I'm going to put it in as well." And so we have two used rolls of black filament, and it's like, okay, but how much do we have total? It got out of hand. So I was trying to make an inventory tracker. Now, this is using a gallery, built-in gallery, right here. That's pretty familiar to most people. However, this side is 100% HTML. This is all HTML produced, except for this right here, which is a button, because you cannot create controls with inside of HTML. But it looks a lot better, and I got this. It looks more like to do this right inside of Power Apps. You could do it with regular controls, and you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 15 different controls that you have to do to make this look okay. And then is it going to scroll? I don't know. When is it going to scroll? This right here, because an HTML control will scroll if needed, if it gets too much or too much information. So if I went on with this table, kept going, and I had a lot of them, it would actually scroll up for us so we can go back and forth. So this is using a SharePoint list and just grabbing all that information and then put it in here. And the reason why I did it this way is because it's read-only information. That's what HTML is really good for, is read-only information. And rather than having these big, huge galleries where you're trying to do horizontal and vertical and all this junk of containers and trying to make it look good, there is the grid containers which are in preview, or the grid tables and the error tables are still in preview, which, by Microsoft standards, what we say is you should not use them in production if it's in preview. Though we still do, right? We do that anyways. But you can do that, and it's not wrong. But if you just want a static way of doing things, and again, you can make this all position relative, make it shrink or grow depending on what you do. If I wanted it longer, I could have done this across the whole screen and then expand the table automatically because you're using HTML and CSS to say make it to parent.width. And it does respond to that. So you can see right here, the lift, the padding of this image right here is the padding left times 3 and the image logo. We're going to go into a bit more for those who don't know string interpolation, but this is what I mean by string interpolation, right? I have a string, and this is the HTML, and I'm in the middle of my string, I am putting code, right? Power Query stuff, and referencing the database or the data source and getting what I need to put that in. Okay. So let's look at that, right? So I'm kind of one of those things where I got the cooking show where I've got things already created, because why not? So I want to show first, this says, yes, we're going to continue editing. Here's no HTML, right? If I wanted to typically give me a vertical gallery, normally I want that information, I would go ahead and say that let's do users. And this is what most people will start off with, like, okay, well, I really want to go in here, and I don't really want the image. I just want the title, subtitle. Some people, like me, will come to a gallery and just wipe everything out and just come in here and delete it and create my own things right here, what I want. And then we spend all of our time sizing things, getting rid of other things that are just, in my opinion, stupid. Because it's just kind of plain Jane. I want it to look a certain way. Okay, this really hinders my creativeness. And in fact, when people visit the sites that have, they just say, "Oh yeah, that's a Canvas app, right?" But with this same, and you know, it's not going to be super spectacular to many of you, using the same user information table, I have just with an HTML. I've got this layout now, right? Which is there's HTML, it's scrollable, it's actually selectable, right? I can go ahead and select it and copy and paste it into an Excel spreadsheet and recognize it as a table, just like you would. I have a button here because I have a button overlay like a DR one, but I do have this guy, which will respect, and you can go and do things. Just you cannot point to a screen or something like that. It does not recognize navigation's the screen, right? You can't use it as a regular control. But oops, there we go. But look, we're going to look into, and for those who are right, this is one control, it's one HTML text. So we're going to go ahead and bring this down and see what we're doing here. Not that much information. I always try to start it off with a div, right? A division. When you talk about string interpolation, we're saying put this $sign in there. If I remove the $sign, it makes all of these kind of string. It's just a string, except now I got to do single quotes throughout a double quote and whatnot. If I put it back in, ay, chihuahua, déjeme. Right there, with the $sign, I can now add code where I need it. So I can start to format it. And it takes it right away. If you're familiar with HTML, they start typing or just a text box and it will start showing right away. So you can see right away what's going on. There's my link, and it's just a normal link. I have it to go to a blank. So it's recognizing all the HTML. It's recognizing all the line CSS. Okay. Here, so this is how you do a repeated region, right? I want to repeat my rows. So you can cat this by each row will have this, and you can create more and more. But just with this little bit of code, oh, and then right here, right? I'm using the flex box. So it recognizes all the CSS3 stuff that you can do, and that brings it, I said, space in between. So it's positioning Bob from Alice and spraying it space in between as elements. So with just a little bit of code here, we have now transformed this data rather than using the gallery into something that's maybe more readable and more what people are used to and not expecting, in fact. And you can go ahead and print this page. I know people like to do this and say, you know, do a print. This will respect a print or a printout as far as the margins of the paper goes as well. So it's just a quick, nice way of showing it. Now, the thing that keep popping up. So here is right, this is my gallery. And you see this, it's a list. And this is the HTML right here. Come on, show me the HTML. So this is a lot of stuff that I put in, but it's not too much. But you can see it's just all this, right? Doing an concat because I want to do what's called a grouped item. So if I have 2 blacks or 5 blacks of the same item, I want to show up only one time, but have it, for example, show how many of each I have. So this one right here. But it only show it once. I don't want this to show up 3 times because I have 3 items. I want to show up one time and have done that way. So all these calculations all this complexity can be done within inside of HTML and displayed as such. And so just again, with a little bit of work and a little bit of know-how, you can really boost your presentation and just make people go like, oh my goodness, right? Real quick on the backside, SharePoint. So you have all this, right? This is what it's doing. It's grabbing all this and then formatting it. Yes, Rachel.
I just wanna add a comment real quick. For those of you working in Power Apps, there is a control limit, or I won't say a limit, but there's a performance restriction on the number of controls that you have on a screen. So, and when you put a control like a text control in a gallery, I do believe it counts repeatedly against
Yes.
against your performance. So Brent, seeing you do this and creating the gallery with the HTML, and that's one control. I mean, that's such a performance saver in my book. I'm sure there's limits to it, but
There are limits to it, and I like how like I can find it easy. I know where it's at, right? I'm not drilling down. The other option too would be if you wanted to save performance issues, you can create a component, a custom component, and then that component, even though this would have 5,000 items in it, counts as one component for your screen. So that's another way to save as well, if you want to do that way. But yes, this does save. It's one component versus 15, right? It's going to just help. And again, it's easy to maintain given the people that are maintaining know HTML and CSS, which a lot of people do, hopefully, especially if you're in the development world. If not, it really is a good entry-level code to start learning. I'm not going to say it's a programming language because that's not technically a programming language, but it is a code. It's a good way to start learning how code works. It's a good baseline. And just to show you performance-wise, it's not bad. I can click on this one. So this is going around to, grabbing it all. And so it's all good, all fun stuff there. All right. So, just to recap, we looked at some responsive design. Using math. Math is king. We love math. Everybody, if you don't like math, you will start loving math. Please start loving math. I hated math. I was one of the guys that complained like I will never use math ever again. And ever since I graduated, all I've done is math. Math. Even in non, I'm surprised how much math is used. I'm surprised people don't really show in school anymore, or I guess they do kind of now more so of how you use math and what jobs. My son, in fact, has a teacher that had a poster in class and say, "Oh, you think you want this job or this career? Guess what? This is the math we use." And it was a big long poster. It's like you couldn't get away from math. Just like that, people think programming is not math for some reason, but you are doing a lot of math. And we talked about how to scale image controls. You want to make that nice and set up and clean. And we looked at HTML and how really you can really clean up and make your app shine and really stand out from the rest. And maybe not make it look too much like a Power App, and maybe something more of what people are used to seeing and more friendly. But with that, that's the end of what I have. I think I ended a little early. I apologize, but if there's any questions, open mic for this until I guess the next 20 minutes. Ask me whatever.